Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Monday the 3rd of June, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. I'd like to start by thanking Immanuel for his invitation to the Belcam Centre last Friday to see an exhibition of his art, wonderful art, and I went with my partner Christine and we met up with other subscribers. I think John Mitchell was there and Nosy Person, and I was delighted to see Gran Torino arrive, and it was a very nice day, and Immanuel did a very nice explanation of his paintings, and it was lovely to see the respect and regard the local community have for this wonderful artist. And the painting that he had with all the locals in it is, I think, 17 feet across, and it could be the second largest oil painting in Ireland, following the marriage of Strongbow and Aoife done by McAleese, which hangs in the National Gallery. So thanks again, Immanuel, and I look forward to seeing what your next adventure holds. So starting with last week, with Gemma doing a live stream from the Scalp, which is between Kiltiernan and Enniskerry on the Dublin-Wicklow border, regarding the cutting of trees during nesting season. The following day she reported from Ballybrack, South County Dublin, on more trees cutting. I decided to ring the Green Party, first Kieran Cuff, who said that I would be better off ringing head office. Spoke to a man called John. I brought up the subject of 5G as well, explaining that Brussels has decided not to roll out 5G. I spoke about the trees now being cut in 3 different locations and said that the Green Party needs to have this on board, otherwise they would be guilty of gross hypocrisy. He said that he would pass on my concerns to Eamon Ryan. The following day I drove out to the Scalp to see the damage myself, and when I got back I rang the Green Party and spoke to John again. I asked him, can he please make sure that Mr. Ryan brings up the subject of tree cutting during nesting season, and where does the responsibility rest? And interestingly, the same day the Minister for Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht gave a 10-minute speech on the loss. That's Josephine Madigan, by the way. Gave a loss of biodiversity. I also phoned the Parks and Wildlife Service and left a message on their answer machine. I got a call back on Friday and spent some time discussing tree cutting, 5G and Section 40 of the Wildlife Act and the different law between cultivated areas and city. And seemingly in the Swords case, according to this gentleman, up to 10 insurance cases were put in as claims for people tripping over the base of the trees. But if that's the case, if they cut the crown off the tree, why did he still leave the base? I mean, surely that's where people are tripping over. I also mentioned that people had legitimate concerns about 5G, and I directed the gentleman to look at an interview with the ex-head of Microsoft Canada, who said that 5G posed threats to people's health due to the actual strength of the signal and the fact that at a future date it may include the driverless cars, which means they need a very powerful, almost military type grade system to cope with that. So please keep that in mind and do your own research and make sure at any opportunity that you get to inform and educate your friends of the potential dangers to this rollout of 5G. And this is a story I came across now, and I'm calling it the moral inversion. The moral inversion continues. A long-serving priest and vicar and school governor has resigned his post over he claimed that children were being sacrificed on the altar of trans ideology. Sorry, this is from the UK. The Reverend John Parker resigned from both school and church after an 8-year-old pupil at his school transitioned from a boy to a girl. The school in Essex, which has not been named to protect the families, Mr. Parker asked the school whether the child had seen medical or psychological professionals, and was further troubled when a trans advocacy group called Mermaids were invited to train the staff and the teachers how to deal with this boy's transition. The vicar, who is an Oxford biology graduate, questioned the facts pushed by the advocacy group, but was shut down by the school head teacher and trainer, who said that it's my job to deliver the training and I have done that. Mr. Parker resigned, saying that, quote, the school had become a place where you did not have the freedom to question things and was no longer a Christian place of grace and truth. The vicar then approached his bishop to express his concerns, which were also dismissed, and later opted in resigning from the church as well, quote, saying, "There is no longer a place in the Church of England for me. In my opinion, with the decision to allow gay marriage, the door has now been opened and will lead to an abnormal perversions being forced down the throats of ordinary people, and it's only a matter of time before the LGBTI will include the letter P, which will stand for paedophilia." An interesting follow-up to the school in Birmingham that is protesting the teaching of sex education and LGBT issues to primary school children. Birmingham City Council has now placed a High Court order to ban protests in and around Anderson Park Primary School, with protesters facing arrest if they appear near the school. It is reported many of the activists don't have children in the school or are not from the area. And earlier this month, an LGBT counter-protester group started hanging rainbow flags on the railings of the school and handing out leaflets. Shakfil Afkar, who leads the protest, said that they will appeal the decision, saying, quote, "It is not the end, but the beginning. At least the Muslim community is prepared to protect their children. I may not agree with them on nearly almost everything, but in this one I do, especially when you look at the directive being pushed by the World Health Organization, being lapped up by Zapone and Veruca and the other cultural Marxists in the Dáil. Muslims versus the LGBT community. That's an interesting one now. Both protected groups, with the authorities in a bit of a conundrum as to they usually pick the Muslim side. It is also ironic to see Muslims carrying signs saying no to sexualization of children, while the religion allows children to be married to middle-aged men, and once a girl has had her first period, is regarded as being mature enough to be married. The real issue here is why the rest of the community seems to be on with creches of children aged learning about sex. Time to consider homeschooling your children. This week also saw the annual Bilderberg meeting take place in Montreux, Switzerland, starting last Thursday and finishing yesterday. A meeting that takes place behind closed doors and, unlike Davos, involves very little publicity. The very existence of this group has only been admitted to in the last 5 years. Up until then, it was dismissed as conspiracy for those with overactive minds. Set up in 1954 and named after the Hotel Bilderberg, which is in Oosterbeek in the Netherlands. This year's meeting will be attended by Pascal Donoghue and Michael O'Leary, who will be part of the 130 to 150 guests who are there by invitation only, and it's the third time both of these have been invited. Irish attendees at previous meetings have included Gareth Fitzgerald in 1985, Michael McDowell in 2007, Paul Gallagher, Attorney General, Dermot Gleeson, then Chairman of Anglo-Irish Bank, both of whom were present at the meeting with Brian Lenihan and Brian Cowan when they agreed the bank bailout back in 2008. Charlie McCreevy, Simon Coveney famously recorded walking around Copenhagen with Peter Sutherland in 2014. Sutherland being head of the steering committee of Bilderberg for many years before passing away in 2018, leaving an estate estimated to be worth over €200 million, who gave a speech in the House of Lords in 2012 where he spoke about the future of Europe lies in creating a hegemony of peoples. Sounds a bit like the personal philosophy of my namesake, Count Richard. A Google search of YouTube should reveal that speech and also more on Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Dennis O'Brien and Michael O'Leary, who's head of Europe's busiest airline with a fleet of over 450 aircraft and carried 142 million passengers last year. 95-year-old Henry Kissinger is also a regular attendee, who said in a secretly recorded speech in 2002, quote, "Today, America would be outraged if the United Nations troops entered Los Angeles. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. To understand future wars will be fought between capitalists and anti-capitalists. As society polarizes, control of information will be as important as control of territory." Other frequent attendees included David Rockefeller, who died in 2017, aged 101. who was also recorded saying, quote, "We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis and the nations will accept the New World Order." I'm reminded of an interview Mikhail Gorbachev gave in 1996 where he expressed the real truth behind the global warming agenda. Quote, "The threat of environmental crisis will be the international disaster key to unlock the New World Order." With the rebranding of global warming to climate change and now climate emergency, and with countries now deciding to take government policy due to protestations of a 16-year-old Swedish schoolgirl, you can see how within that 30-year period, the change in separating education from school to produce social justice warriors driven by lefty ideologies incapable of critical thought. The future as it stands does not look good. As Benjamin Franklin once said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. We need to remind ourselves that this is our country, not some globalist plaything, not some globalist testing ground of social engineering policies ranging from the obscene, such as pushing the World Health Organization guidelines on sex education beginning from 0 to 4, to teach children about masturbation, to the bizarre of allowing same-sex couples register on a birth certificate. Who on earth do these people think they are? This is a land of our ancestors that was worked and toiled, the land made fertile in parts by mixing sand and seaweed over generations to create productive fields in challenging and wild Atlantic shorelines and offshore islands. An island nation surrounded by 32 inhabited islands, from the largest of Inishmore with just shy of 900 people and doubles in population every day during the holiday season, to the smallest such as Lambay off Dublin with only 6 residents, and Horse Island in Roaring Water Bay, County Cork, for sale at the moment for a price of 6,750,000 and one remaining due to move resident. As Michael Collins once said, quote, "Give us the future, we've had enough of your past. Give us back our country, to live in, to grow in and to love." It's time that we remember that our freedom came at a price and that this should not be, we should not be complacent about this, and isn't it time that these were taught some manners? And we'll end with another quote from Michael Collins. "It's one thing to want to have a drink and it's another to be driven to it." Now, since Saturday, I was aware of the meeting in outside the GPO involving the Palestinians, and I'd just like to make a comment on the protests of Palestinians and the supporters outside the GPO on Saturday, where the speaker emphasised that we are all human. The people murdered in Gaza are all human. Well, I would like this speaker, who sounded just like Linda Sosaur, born in New York in 1980, eldest of 7 children of Palestinian immigrants, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and a member of the Council of American Islamic Relations, would like to comment on how the last 30 days, even though this is during the holy month of Ramadan, there has been 144 Islamic terrorist attacks in 24 countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria that has killed 680 people and injured 639, including men, women and children. Are these victims not human as well? As regards the racial slur regarding white privilege, how many of the more than 10,000 homeless, as she described them, are people of colour? I don't see any walking around, any sleeping rough. A man I was talking to recently told me about a friend of his who was living with his wife and 2 children in his mother-in-law's house outside across the road from the school where his children go to school, and he's been living there for 9 years. He got talking to an Iranian man one day outside the school who commented on how nice the house across the road was, and the man said, "Oh, I'm staying with my mother-in-law, I've been on the housing list for 9 years," to which the man replied that he'd only been to Ireland 3 months and had already been given a house. So that's a house with so there you go. That's just something to keep in mind. So there are a couple of thoughts which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.